The engineering deck of the Celestial Dawn hummed with the sound of 1,000 machines working in harmony. Minho sat cross-legged beneath a plasma conduit, his tools spread around him like scattered puzzle pieces. Oil stained his gray uniform and his black hair stuck to his forehead with sweat. He had been working on the cooling system for 6 hours straight, and his back ached from the awkward position. The ship was massive, home to warriors from 17 different alien species, all preparing for battle against the Ravager fleet. Minho was just one engineer among hundreds, and he preferred it that way. Nobody bothered him down here in the lower decks. The prestigious alien engineers worked on the upper levels, handling the important systems. Down here, Minho fixed the things nobody else wanted to touch. A metallic crash echoed through the bay. Minho looked up and saw a creature that made his breath catch. She stood nearly 8 feet tall with dark green scales that seemed to absorb the light around her. Her eyes were golden and bright like twin suns. She wore the torn remains of a military uniform, and in her arms she carried pieces of broken armor. Commander Aerith of the Thaxian Empire had arrived. Everyone in the engineering bay stopped working. Even the aliens who usually ignored humans turned to stare. Aerith was a legend, a warrior who had fought in 43 battles without a single defeat. Her family had served in the Galactic Defense Council for 6 generations. "I need an engineer," Aerith said. Her voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. "Someone who can fix this." She dropped the armor pieces onto the nearest work table. The sound rang through the bay like a bell. Minho stood up slowly, wiping his hands on his pants. He had never seen armor like this before. Even broken, it was beautiful. The metal was dark silver, almost black, and it seemed to shimmer with an inner light. "That is void steel," whispered Ji-Wan, who appeared beside Minho. She was his closest friend on the ship, another human engineer who had been assigned to the Celestial Dawn 2 years ago. "They forge it in dying stars. I thought it was supposed to be unbreakable." "Nothing is unbreakable," Minho said quietly. 3 alien engineers approached the table. First came Preth, a being made entirely of living crystal who sparkled under the bay lights. His species, the Luminar, were known as the finest craftsmen in the galaxy. Next was a Korthan, a creature with 4 arms and skin like polished bronze. Last came a Nexian, half organic and half machine, with glowing blue circuits visible beneath transparent skin. They examined the armor in silence. Preeth's crystalline fingers traced the cracks in the metal. The Korthan used a specialized scanner on each piece. The Nexian connected directly to the armor with data cables that emerged from his wrist. After 10 minutes, Preeth spoke. "The molecular bonds are shattered. The quantum structure has collapsed. This armor cannot be repaired." "Impossible," Aerith growled. "This armor has protected my family for generations. It survived the burning of Cathara. It held against plasma fire during the siege of Namara. It can be fixed." "Commander, I understand your attachment," the Nexian said in a flat, mechanical voice, "but our analysis is clear. The damage exists at the quantum level. To repair it would require rebuilding each molecule individually. The process would take months, perhaps years. Even then, the armor would never regain its original strength." The Korthan nodded with all 4 of its heads. "We are sorry, Commander. But this is beyond our ability." Aerith's scales darkened, a sign of anger in her species. She said nothing, but her golden eyes swept across the engineering bay like searchlights. Every engineer looked away, returning to their work. Nobody wanted to meet her gaze. Then a new voice spoke, smooth and confident. "Only the human engineer could fix this armor." Everyone turned. Standing in the doorway was Soren, Aerith's second in command. She was tall and slender, covered in short silver fur with patterns like moonlight on water. Her species, the Velaskans, looked like cats that had learned to walk upright and carry weapons. Her amber eyes were sharp and knowing. She turned those eyes toward Minho, who was still half hidden behind the plasma conduit. "What?" Minho said. "No, I'm just a regular technician. I fix cooling systems and recalibrate sensors. I don't work with void steel." "You're human," Soren said, as if that explained everything. She walked across the bay, her steps silent despite her height. "Your species has a reputation. You fix things that cannot be fixed. You solve problems that have no solution. Is this reputation false?" "It's not about being human," Minho said, feeling his face grow hot. "It's about understanding the problem." "Then understand this one," Aerith said. She picked up the largest piece of armor, the chest plate, and held it toward Minho. "In 72 hours, the fleet departs for combat. Without this armor, I cannot lead my battalion. 800 warriors will fight without their commander. Many will die. Minho took the armor piece carefully. It was heavier than he expected, dense with ancient power. Up close, he could see the damage clearly. Cracks ran through the metal like lightning frozen in place, but there was something else too. Something the other engineers had missed. The cracks had patterns. They weren't random. "Let me look at it," Minho said. "I'm not promising anything." Praith made a sound like breaking glass, the Luminar version of laughter. "The human thinks he can succeed where we have failed. This will be amusing to watch." "He will fail," the Nexian agreed. "The mathematics are absolute." Ji-won stepped forward, her eyes flashing with anger. "Maybe your mathematics are the problem. Maybe you're so busy calculating that you forget to actually think." "Enough," Aerith said. Her voice was not loud, but it cut through all other sounds. "The human has 72 hours. If he succeeds, he will have my eternal gratitude. If he fails, we are no worse than we are now." She looked at Minho one more time. Her golden eyes seemed to look through him, measuring something he couldn't name. Then she turned and left, her footsteps heavy on the metal floor. Soren lingered for a moment, watching Minho with that same knowing expression. "Do not listen to them," she said, gesturing at the alien engineers. "Humans see differently. This is your strength." Then she too was gone, leaving Minho alone with Ji-won and the broken armor. "Well," Ji-won said, "this is going to be interesting." Minho carried the armor pieces to his workstation in the corner of the bay. Other engineers watched him go, some curious, most skeptical. He could hear Praith talking to the others, his voice full of crystalline mockery. But Minho ignored them all. He spread the armor pieces on his work table and activated his scanning equipment. Ji-won brought him coffee from the human section of the ship, the kind that was too bitter for most aliens to drink. As Minho studied the quantum fractures in the void steel, he began to see what the others had missed. They had looked at the damage and seen only destruction. But Minho saw something else. He saw change. He saw evolution. The armor wasn't broken. It was transforming. And maybe, just maybe, he could help it finish what it had started. Minho did not sleep the first night. He sat at his workstation with the armor pieces arranged in front of him like a puzzle that refused to make sense. The quantum scanner displayed patterns that shifted every time he looked away. The molecular structure changed from moment to moment, never settling into a stable form. This was why the other engineers had given up. They were looking for stability, for a fixed state they could restore. But the armor was not stable. It was alive in a way that machines should not be alive. "You need to rest," Ji-won said. She had stayed with him through the night, bringing him food and coffee that he barely touched. "Your brain won't work if you don't sleep." "I'll sleep when I understand this," Minho said. His eyes felt dry and heavy, but his mind was racing. "Ji-won, look at this pattern. What does it remind you of?" She leaned over his shoulder, studying the holographic display. The quantum fractures in the armor created lines that branched and split, creating elaborate designs throughout the metal. "It looks like a river delta," she said. "Or tree roots. Or lightning." "Exactly," Minho said, excitement creeping into his tired voice. "It's a natural pattern. Not random, not damaged, natural." "But armor isn't natural," Ji-won pointed out. "It's manufactured." "That's what I thought too. But I started reading about void steel." Minho pulled up files on his display, pages of research he had downloaded from the ship's archives. "It's not like normal metal. They forge it in the hearts of dying stars, where gravity and energy do impossible things to matter. The metal remembers that process. It remembers being part of something bigger." Ji-won frowned. "Minho, you sound like you've been awake too long. Metal doesn't have memories. Not memories like we have," Minho agreed, "but quantum impressions. Think about it. This armor has been worn by 6 generations of Aerith's family. 6 different warriors, each one fighting different battles, each one leaving their mark on the material at a level we can barely measure." He pulled up another display, this one showing the armor's history. Aerith had given him access to her family records, thousands of years of combat data. Minho had spent hours reading battle reports, studying how the armor had been damaged and repaired over centuries. "Every time the armor was hit, it adapted," Minho said. "Every repair changed it slightly. The other engineers tried to restore it to its original state, but that's impossible. The armor doesn't want to go backward. It wants to move forward." "You're talking about it like it's alive," Ji-won said. "Maybe it is, in its own way." Minho rubbed his eyes, trying to push away the exhaustion. I need to stop thinking like an engineer and start thinking like a doctor. This armor isn't broken. It's injured. And injured things need to heal, not be rebuilt. Jiwan was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. You're crazy, but that's why you might actually succeed. The second day brought visitors. Praith arrived first, his crystalline body refracting the workshop lights into rainbow patterns. He examined Minho's work with obvious disdain. You're making it worse, Praith said, his voice ringing like glass bells. Look at what you've done. You've introduced 17 new microfractures into the chest plate alone. I'm mapping the quantum structure, Minho explained. I need to understand how the patterns connect before I can work with them. Work with them? Preeth's light flared brighter, a sign of confusion. You cannot work with quantum fractures. You must eliminate them. That is basic materials science. Your materials science, Minho said. Human engineering is different. Preeth made that breaking glass sound again. Human engineering is improvisation masquerading as technique. You have no systematic approach. You simply try random solutions until something works. It's not random, Jiwan said sharply. Minho is testing hypotheses. Just because you don't understand his process doesn't mean there isn't one. Praith turned his multifaceted eyes toward her. And what is your role here, human female? I'm making sure he doesn't collapse from exhaustion, Jiwan said. And I'm building the tools he needs. She gestured to her own workstation where she had been fabricating custom equipment. Human tools mixed with alien materials, creating devices that no engineering manual had ever described. A resonance chamber built from luminar crystal. A quantum probe with a human-designed AI interface. A molecular forge that combined Nexian precision with human intuition. Unorthodox, Preeth said. But he sounded less certain now. On the third day, Minho had his breakthrough. He was studying the armor's chest plate when he noticed something strange. The quantum patterns changed when he touched the metal. Not much, just a tiny shift, but it was there. The armor responded to living contact. It's reading me, Minho said. Jiwan, come here. Touch this. She pressed her hand against the armor. The quantum scanner showed the patterns shift again, different from before. It's reading both of us differently, Jiwan breathed. How is that possible? Because it's designed to bond with warriors, Minho said. It has to adapt to whoever wears it. That's why it can't be restored to a fixed state. It needs to be dynamic, flexible, alive. He worked through the night again, but this time with purpose. Instead of trying to fix the fractures, he began to guide them. Using harmonic resonance patterns, he encouraged the quantum structure to flow in specific directions. He used controlled energy pulses to help the armor remember its purpose while accepting its new form. It was delicate work, like conducting an orchestra where every instrument was invisible. One wrong frequency and the entire structure could collapse. But Minho had steady hands and a patient mind. He worked slowly, carefully, letting the armor tell him what it needed. Jiwan helped by monitoring the quantum field, calling out readings while Minho adjusted the resonance chamber. They developed a rhythm, working together like they had been doing this for years instead of days. Field stability at 60%, Jiwan called out. Increasing harmonic frequency, Minho responded. 70%. The patterns are starting to align. Hold it there. Let it settle. Other engineers began to gather outside the workshop. Word had spread through the ship about the humans' strange methods. Some came to mock, but others came out of genuine curiosity. Even species who normally dismissed human technology watched through the transparent walls as Minho worked. Soren visited on the fourth day. She stood in the doorway, silent and observant, her amber eyes taking in every detail. Minho was too focused to notice her at first. He had been working for 60 hours with only brief moments of sleep, and his hands were shaking from exhaustion and stimulants. You should rest, Soren said quietly. Minho jumped, nearly dropping his tools. How long have you been standing there? Long enough. She walked into the workshop, her movements graceful and quiet. You work like a Velascan hunter, patient, watching for the right moment. I'm just trying to understand the armor, Minho said. No, Soren said. You're trying to listen to it. That's different. That's better. She picked up one of the armor pieces, feeling its weight. My people have a concept. We call it flow sight, the ability to see when something is in harmony with the universe. You have this gift. I'm just an engineer, Minho protested. You're more than that, Soren said. But you don't see it yet. She set the armor piece down carefully. Aerith chose well when she turned her eyes toward you. She recognized something the others missed. After Soren left, Ji-won brought Minho real food from the human quarters. Not the tasteless nutrition bars he had been eating, but actual rice and vegetables that reminded him of home. He ate while continuing to work, barely tasting the food but grateful for it anyway. 8 hours left, Ji-won said. Can you finish? I have to, Minho said simply. The final hours were the hardest. The armor's quantum structure was aligning, but it required constant attention. Minho had to maintain the harmonic field while simultaneously guiding the molecular reformation. It was like trying to solve a puzzle while standing on one leg in a windstorm. But slowly, piece by piece, the armor came together. When it was done, Minho collapsed into his chair, too exhausted even to look at his work. Ji-won checked the quantum readings one final time. It's stable, she said, wonder in her voice. Minho, it's actually stable. He forced himself to look. The armor lay on his work table, complete once more. But it looked different now. The surface showed flowing patterns like water frozen mid-ripple, a visual representation of its quantum restructuring. It was beautiful in a way that made his chest ache. I hope this works, Minho said quietly. Outside the workshop, a crowd had gathered. The word had spread. The human engineer had finished his impossible task. Now they would see if he had succeeded or simply created an elaborate failure. Aerith arrived at the workshop exactly at the 72-hour mark. She moved through the crowd of onlookers like a battleship cutting through waves, her massive form making everyone step aside. Soren followed close behind, her amber eyes bright with anticipation. Minho stood beside the restored armor, swaying slightly from exhaustion. Ji-won steadied him with a hand on his elbow. The workshop was silent except for the hum of machinery and the whisper of curious voices from the hallway. It's done? Aerith asked. Her golden eyes studied the armor with an expression Minho couldn't read. Yes, Minho said. His voice was rough from too much coffee and too little sleep. But it's changed. I couldn't restore it to its original state. The quantum structure wouldn't allow it. Aerith picked up the chest plate, holding it up to the light. The flowing patterns on the surface caught the illumination and seemed to move, like oil on water. For a long moment she said nothing. Minho's heart pounded in his chest. Had he failed? Had he destroyed a priceless family heirloom? This is not my armor, Aerith said quietly. Minho felt his stomach drop. Ji-won's hand tightened on his arm. Then Aerith smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. This is better. Relief flooded through Minho so strongly that his knees almost buckled. But before he could respond, Praith pushed through the crowd. The crystalline engineer's light was blazing with anger. Commander, you cannot possibly wear that, Praith said. The human has altered the fundamental structure of the void steel. This is not repair. This is desecration. 6 generations of your family wore that armor in its proper form. Now it has been changed beyond recognition. I can see what it has become, Aerith said. Her voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. What I want to know is how it will perform. The quantum stability is uncertain, the Nexian engineer said, stepping forward. His circuits glowed blue as he ran calculations. Under combat stress, the restructured bonds may fail catastrophically. The armor could disintegrate around you, Commander. He's right, Admiral Kess said, emerging from the crowd. The insectoid, Commander clicked her mandibles together in a gesture of concern. I cannot allow you to wear untested armor into combat. The risk is too great. The risk is mine to take, Aerith said. But the consequences affect us all, Admiral Kess replied. 800 warriors depend on your leadership. If the armor fails and you fall in the first engagement, what happens to your battalion? Aerith set the chest plate down carefully. She looked at Minho for a long moment, then at the armor, then back at Minho. Human engineer, do you trust your work? Minho's mouth was dry. Every eye in the workshop was on him. He thought about the 72 hours he had spent studying the armor, learning its patterns, listening to its quantum song. He thought about the flowing structures he had guided into being, the harmony he had felt when the last piece fell into place. Yes, he said. I trust it. That is not good enough, Praith said. Trust is not science. Show us data. Show us proof. I can't. Minho admitted. The armor is unique, there's nothing to compare it to. I can show you quantum stability readings, but they won't mean much. This armor has to be tested the way it was meant to be used, in combat. Unacceptable, Admiral Kess said. Commander Aerith, I'm ordering you to… Wait. Soren stepped forward, her silver fur catching the light. With respect, Admiral, perhaps we're asking the wrong questions. We're so focused on whether the armor is safe that we're forgetting to ask if it's necessary. Of course it's necessary, Aerith said. This armor has protected my family for generations. But why? Soren asked. Her amber eyes swept across the gathered crowd. I've been thinking about this for days, watching the human work. Our species, all of us, we build things to be perfect and unchanging. We create armor that stays exactly the same for centuries. But humans are different. They build things that grow, that adapt, that change with their users. She picked up one of the armor pieces, turning it in her hands. Humans survive in environments that would kill any of us, not because they're stronger, but because they adapt faster. Their tools adapt with them. Maybe that's what this armor needed. Maybe it was waiting for someone who understood that change isn't destruction. Change is survival. Pretty words, Praith said. But words won't stop plasma bolts. Then let me test it, Aerith said firmly. I'll wear the armor during training exercises. If it fails under controlled conditions, I won't wear it to battle. Admiral Kess's mandibles clicked together rapidly, a sign of deep thought. Very well, but if there's any indication of structural failure, you remove the armor immediately, understood? Understood, Aerith said. The training took place in the ship's combat simulation chamber, a vast room that could replicate any battlefield condition. Minho and Jiwon watched from the observation deck along with dozens of other engineers and officers. Below, Aerith stood in the center of the chamber, now fully armored. The armor fit her perfectly, moving with her like a second skin. The flowing patterns on its surface rippled when she moved, creating an effect that was both beautiful and slightly unsettling. She looked like a warrior from ancient legends, powerful and otherworldly. Beginning first test, announced the computer. Low-intensity plasma fire. Bright bolts of energy shot from hidden emitters, targeting Aerith from multiple angles. She raised her arm and the armor absorbed the impacts easily. Smoke rose from the contact points, but the armor held firm. Increasing intensity, the computer said. More plasma bolts, hotter and faster. Aerith moved through them like a dancer, letting the armor take hits while she practiced combat maneuvers. Minho held his breath, watching the quantum stability readings on his handheld display. The numbers fluctuated but stayed within safe limits. Maximum plasma intensity. The air filled with brilliant light as dozens of plasma emitters fired at once. Aerith disappeared in a storm of energy. Minho leaned forward, his heart racing. The readings spiked, the quantum field fluctuating wildly. Then the fire stopped. Smoke cleared. Aerith stood in the center of the chamber, unharmed. The armor's surface glowed slightly, the flowing patterns moving faster now as if excited by the combat. Armor integrity at 98%, the computer announced. No structural damage detected. Cheers erupted from the observation deck. Jiwon grabbed Minho's shoulders, shaking him with excitement. But Minho just stared at his display, fascinated. The armor hadn't just resisted the plasma. It had adapted to it, redistributing density to the impact points automatically. Second test, the computer said. Kinetic impacts. Heavy projectiles fired from the walls, each one capable of denting standard military armor. Aerith caught one with her gauntleted hand, crushing it like paper. Others bounced off her chest and shoulders, leaving not even a scratch. Third test, quantum disruptor. Minho tensed. This was the weapon that had originally damaged the armor. A blue beam shot from the ceiling, striking Aerith directly. The quantum field around the armor went wild, readings spiking across all spectrums. But the armor held. In fact, it did more than hold. The flowing patterns on its surface began to pulse in rhythm with the disruptor beam, as if harmonizing with it. When the beam shut off, the armor was unchanged. Impossible, Preeth whispered. His crystalline body had gone dim with shock. It adapted to the quantum disruptor. That should be impossible. Nothing is impossible, Minho said quietly. It just takes the right approach. After the tests, Aerith returned to the observation deck. She removed her helmet and looked at Minho with those golden eyes that seemed to see everything. You have given me more than repaired armor, she said. You have given me armor that lives, that thinks, that grows stronger with each battle. My ancestors would be honored. She raised her hand, palm up. On her wrist was a small device that Minho didn't recognize. She pressed it against his hand and he felt a sharp sting. What? He started to say. Among my people, when a craftsman repairs or improves a warrior's equipment, they become shieldkin, Aerith explained. A bond of trust that goes deeper than words. You are under my protection now, human engineer. My enemies are your enemies. My victories are your victories. Minho looked at his hand. A small mark glowed there, bioluminescent and intricate. A tattoo that would identify him as shieldkin to a Thaxian commander. I just fixed your armor, Minho said, embarrassed by the ceremony. Just come back alive so I know it worked. Aerith's smile showed all her teeth. I plan to. As she left to prepare for the coming battle, Soren lingered behind. She approached Minho quietly. You don't understand what you've done, she said softly. You didn't just fix armor. You showed the entire fleet that human methods have value. That adaptation beats perfection. This will change things. I just wanted to help, Minho said. I know, Soren replied. That's what makes it matter. The Coalition fleet dropped out of hyperspace near the shattered remains of the Kelthera system. Minho watched from the tactical center of the Celestial Dawn, his hands gripping the console as the view screen filled with enemy ships. The Ravager fleet was massive, hundreds of vessels that looked like they had been grown rather than built, all dark metal and organic curves. Targets locked, announced the tactical officer, a four-armed Korthan whose name Minho had never learned. All batteries ready to fire. Jiwan stood beside Minho, her face pale. This was her first real battle. Most human engineers never saw combat, staying safely on support ships far from the fighting. But Minho had insisted on being here, close enough to monitor Aerith's armor through the telemetry feed. Fleet engaging in 3, 2, 1. Space erupted with light and fire. Plasma bolts crossed the void in brilliant streams. Missiles left trails like comets. The Celestial Dawn shuddered as enemy fire struck its shields. On the tactical display, hundreds of icons moved in a deadly dance, ships maneuvering and firing in patterns too fast for Minho's eyes to follow. Where's Aerith? Minho asked, trying to make sense of the chaos on his screen. There, Jiwan said, pointing. A single icon moved ahead of the main fleet, leading a tight formation of smaller ships. Her battalion is taking point. They're heading for the Ravager command ship. Minho pulled up the armor telemetry on his personal display. Numbers scrolled past showing temperature, quantum stability, structural integrity. Everything was green. The armor was performing perfectly. But then the Ravagers responded. A massive ship, larger than the Celestial Dawn, moved into firing position. It was covered in weapons that crackled with purple energy. When it fired, the beam was so bright that Minho had to look away from the main screen. What was that? Jiwan asked. Quantum disruptor, the tactical officer said grimly. They've upgraded it. That's not the same weapon we faced before. On the tactical display, 3 allied ships simply vanished, not destroyed in explosions but gone as if they had never existed. Their molecular bonds had been disrupted so completely that nothing remained except expanding clouds of particles. Aerith's battalion is moving to engage, another officer reported. Minho's hands tightened on his console. He watched the telemetry as Aerith led her warriors directly toward the massive Ravager ship. What was she doing? That weapon would kill her, armor or not. The disruptor fired again. The purple beam swept across space, touching a dozen ships. Most of them disintegrated instantly. But Aerith's ship kept flying, and beside it so did the vessels of her battalion. How? Jiwan breathed. How are they surviving? Minho stared at his display in wonder. The armor's quantum signature was changing, shifting, adapting in real time. The flowing patterns he had built into the structure were responding to the disruptor's frequency. harmonizing with it instead of being destroyed by it. It's the armor, Minho said. It remembers being damaged by that weapon. It's using that memory to protect against it. But there was more. The telemetry showed something impossible. The adaptive field from Areth's armor was extending beyond her own ship, creating a bubble of protection around the nearby vessels. Every warrior close to her was immune to the disruptor. All ships focus on the command vessel. Areth's voice came over the fleet channel. Stay close to my position. The human's armor protects us. The tactical officer looked at Minho with new respect. Your work is saving lives, engineer. Areth's battalion pushed through the disruptor field like a spear through water. They moved in tight formation, using Areth's armor as a shield for everyone. Minho watched the telemetry readings fluctuate wildly as the armor worked overtime, adapting to constant disruptor fire while protecting dozens of ships. Can it handle that much stress? Ji-won asked quietly. I don't know, Minho admitted. It's doing things I never designed it to do. On the main view screen they could see Areth's ship now, a bright point of light racing toward the massive Ravager command vessel. The disruptor fired again and again, but each time the beam touched Areth's position, it simply scattered around her like water around a rock. She's going to ram it, someone said. But Areth had a different plan. Her battalion spread out at the last moment, each ship firing at specific points on the Ravager vessel. The targeting was perfect. Surgical strikes that hit critical systems. The massive ship's weapons went dark. Its shields flickered and died. All batteries fire on that ship, Admiral Kess ordered. The entire coalition fleet opened fire. Plasma bolts, missiles, energy beams all converging on the disabled Ravager command vessel. The explosions were so bright that Minho had to shield his eyes even through the view screen filters. When the light faded, the Ravager ship was gone. Debris spread across space in an expanding cloud. And without their command ship, the rest of the Ravager fleet began to scatter, their coordination broken. Enemy fleet is retreating, the tactical officer announced. We've won. Cheers erupted throughout the tactical center. Officers hugged each other, laughed, wept with relief. The battle had lasted only 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. Minho slumped in his chair, exhausted by the tension. Look at the armor telemetry, Ji-won said, wonder in her voice. Minho pulled up the display again. The readings had stabilized, but the armor's quantum signature was different now. It had learned from the battle. The patterns had evolved, incorporating the experience of combat into its structure. It was stronger than before. It grew, Minho whispered. The armor actually grew stronger from fighting. Several hours later, after the fleet had secured the area and recovered their wounded, Areth returned to the Celestial Dawn. She came directly to the engineering bay, still wearing the armor. Other warriors followed her, a procession of different species, all wanting to see the human who had created the legendary adaptive armor. When Areth entered, every engineer in the bay stopped working and turned to look. The armor was marked with burns and scratches from battle, but the flowing patterns still moved across its surface like living water. It seemed to glow with inner light as if filled with triumph. Human engineer, Areth said. Her voice was tired but strong. You told me to come back alive. I have done so. Minho stood up from his workstation. He was covered in grease again, having spent the post-battle hours fixing damaged systems. The armor worked then? Areth laughed, a deep rumbling sound. Worked, it did more than work. It saved 800 lives, perhaps more. The disruptor protection field extended to all ships near me. Warriors from 6 different species owe you their lives. Admiral Kess appeared in the doorway, her mandibles clicking rapidly. Engineer Minho, I owe you an apology. I doubted your methods. I was wrong. What you created is revolutionary. Praith pushed through the crowd, his crystalline body dim with humility. I too must apologize. I called your work improvisation and chaos. Now I see it was neither. It was vision. You saw what the armor could become, not just what it was. I just listened to what it needed, Minho said, uncomfortable with all the attention. No, Soren said, appearing beside Areth. You did more than listen. You understood? There's a difference. She looked at the other engineers. How many of you have spent days studying a single piece of equipment, learning its history, feeling its quantum signature with your own hands? This is what humans do. They connect with their tools. They make machines that are alive. I want to learn, the Nexian engineer said. His circuits glowed blue with excitement. Can you teach us your methods? I want adaptive armor for my species, a Luminar warrior said. We need this technology for our ships, said a Korthan officer. More voices joined in, everyone talking at once. Minho looked at G1 with panic in his eyes. She just smiled and shrugged. One at a time, Aerith's voice cut through the noise. The human engineer needs rest. He has been awake for 5 days. Leave him. The crowd dispersed slowly, reluctantly, but they kept looking back at Minho with new respect. He was no longer just another human engineer. He was the one who had changed everything. When everyone had left except Aerith, Soren, and Ji-won, Minho finally allowed himself to sit down. His legs were shaking from exhaustion. What happens now, he asked. Now you become famous, Soren said with amusement in her voice. Word of what you did will spread through the fleet, through the entire galaxy. Every species will want to understand human adaptive engineering. I don't want to be famous, Minho said. I just want to fix things. Then you'll have many things to fix, Aerith said. She removed her helmet and looked at him with those golden eyes. But first you rest. That's an order from your shield kin. Minho was too tired to argue. 3 months after the battle at Kelthera, Minho stood in his workshop, which no longer felt like his own. Requests came daily from engineers across the fleet, all wanting to study his methods. Admiral Kess had offered him a position as Chief Adaptive Systems Engineer, with triple his current salary. The Galactic Defense Council wanted to create an entire department based on human engineering principles, but Minho had turned down all the offers. He still worked in the lower decks, still fixed cooling systems and recalibrated sensors. The only difference was that people respected him now. They listened when he spoke. They asked his opinion on difficult problems. He wasn't sure he liked it. You're hiding, Ji-won said, appearing in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee. She had been promoted to senior engineer, and now wore the insignia of a department head. But she still made time to visit Minho and bring him terrible coffee. I'm working, Minho corrected, gesturing at the disassembled plasma regulator on his table. You're avoiding the meeting with the 3 ambassadors who came specifically to see you, Ji-won said. That's hiding. I don't know what to tell them, Minho admitted. They want me to explain adaptive engineering like it's a formula they can copy. But it's not. It's a way of thinking. You can't just teach that in a meeting. Then teach it properly, a new voice said. Minho turned to see a young woman standing in the doorway beside Ji-won. She was small, maybe 20 years old, with short black hair and bright, curious eyes. She wore a human engineering uniform with fresh creases like it had been issued yesterday. This is Soman, Ji-won said. She just arrived on the Celestial Dawn this morning, specifically assigned to learn from you. I didn't request an apprentice, Minho said. The Galactic Defense Council did, Ji-won replied. They want you to train the next generation of adaptive engineers. Human ones first, then we'll see about teaching other species. Soman stepped forward, not intimidated by Minho's reluctance. I've read everything about what you did with Commander Aerith's armor. Every report, every analysis, every interview. But none of them explain how you knew what to do. That's what I want to learn. There's nothing to learn, Minho said. I just looked at the problem differently. Then teach me to see differently, Soman said simply. Minho looked at Ji-won, who just smiled and sipped her coffee. He looked back at Soman, at her eager expression, and saw something of himself in her eyes. The hunger to understand, the need to fix things not because you were ordered to, but because broken things deserve to work again. Fine, he said. But we start with the basics. Before you can do adaptive engineering, you need to understand what you're adapting to. Over the following weeks, Minho taught Soman everything he knew, not through lectures or formal lessons, but by working together on actual problems. A damaged sensor array that needed recalibration, a shield generator that kept overloading, a propulsion system that worked fine in the specifications but poorly in practice. Why did you do it that way? Soman would ask. Because the system told me to, Minho would reply. Systems don't talk, not with words. But they communicate, you just have to listen. He taught her to feel the vibration of machinery, to recognize patterns in quantum fluctuations, to understand that every system had a personality shaped by its history of use. He showed her how to read maintenance logs not just for technical data, but for the story they told about how equipment was actually used versus how it was designed to be used. The gap between design and use is where we work, Minho explained. Other engineers try to force reality to match the design. We adapt the design to match reality. Soman was a fast learner, faster than Minho expected. Within a month, she was solving problems on her own, coming up with solutions that made other engineers shake their heads in disbelief. She had the gift, the ability to see systems as living things rather than static machines. One evening, as they worked late on a particularly stubborn power distribution problem, Soren visited the workshop. She had become a regular presence, often stopping by to watch Minho and Soman work. Sometimes she would ask questions. More often, she just observed in that quiet, knowing way of hers. "You're teaching her well," Soren said, settling onto a workbench with feline grace. "She teaches herself," Minho replied. "I just point her in the right direction. That's what good teachers do." Soren picked up one of Minho's tools, examining it. "I have a request. A personal one." Minho looked up from his work. "What kind of request?" "I want you to examine my combat gear," Soren said. "Not because it's broken. Because I want to see what it could become." "That's different from repair work," Minho said carefully. "I know. But Areth's armor didn't just get fixed. It evolved. It became better than it was. I want to know if my equipment can do the same." She set the tool down. Velasquez believe in growth, in constant improvement. "We never stop learning, never stop adapting. Your methods align with our philosophy perfectly." "I can try," Minho said, "but I can't promise anything. Every system is unique." "I know," Soren said. "That's why I trust you." Working on Soren's gear was different from working on Areth's armor. The armor had been ancient and damaged, crying out for help. Soren's equipment was modern and functional, but Minho could feel the potential in it like seeds waiting to sprout. He spent weeks studying the quantum patterns in her combat suit, her energy weapons, her shield generator. He learned about Velasquez fighting styles, their emphasis on speed and precision. He watched recordings of Soren in combat, seeing how she moved, how she fought. "You're fighting against your equipment," Minho told her after watching her training session. "Your instincts are faster than your gear can respond." "All Velasquez have this problem," Soren said. "Our reaction times are twice as fast as most species. Equipment is always a limitation." "What if it wasn't?" Minho asked. He began modifying her gear with the same principles he had used on Areth's armor, not fixing but evolving. He added quantum processors that could predict her movements, shields that would activate before her conscious mind even registered a threat, weapons that would adjust their output based on her target's weakness. Soman helped with the technical work, fabricating components that didn't exist in any manual. Together they created something new, equipment that worked in harmony with its user rather than simply responding to commands. When Soren tested the upgraded gear, the results were remarkable. She moved through combat simulations like water, her equipment anticipating her needs before she expressed them. Her already impressive combat scores doubled. "This feels right," Soren said afterward, her amber eyes bright with excitement. "This feels like my gear is part of me, not just tools I'm using." "That's the idea," Minho said. Word spread quickly. More warriors came to Minho, wanting their equipment upgraded. Engineers from other species requested transfers to the Celestial Dawn specifically to learn from him. The concept of adaptive engineering became a recognized field, with courses and certifications. But Minho remained in his workshop in the lower decks, uncomfortable with attention, most comfortable with his hands on machinery. One day, 6 months after the battle, Areth returned to the engineering bay. She had been leading combat operations across 3 systems, and Minho hadn't seen her in weeks. Her armor showed the marks of many battles, but it was still functioning perfectly. In fact, the telemetry showed it was stronger now than when Minho had first completed it. "I have something for you," Areth said. She held out a small package wrapped in dark cloth. Minho unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a tool, a multifunction device that could serve as a scanner, a welder, a cutter, a dozen other things. It was made from the same void steel as Areth's armor, formed into a compact shape that fit perfectly in his hand. The metal was warm to the touch and seemed to pulse with inner light. Inscribed on its surface in Thaxian script was a message. Soman, standing nearby, read it aloud. "The one who understands breaking can master rebuilding." "This is a piece of my original armor," Areth explained. "Before you transformed it, I saved this fragment specifically for this purpose. Now you carry a piece of my family's history. Your quantum signature will be in this metal, just as my ancestors' signatures are in my armor." Minho turned the tool over in his hands, feeling its weight, its potential. I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep fixing impossible things, Aerith replied. Say you'll keep teaching others to see the way you see. The galaxy needs more human engineers, Minho. Not because humans are better, but because you think differently. You save lives by refusing to accept that anything is truly broken. After Aerith left, Minho returned to his workstation. Solomon sat across from him, working on her own project now. A shield generator that she was trying to make adaptive. She had the same focused expression Minho recognized from his own face in reflective surfaces. Teacher, Solomon said without looking up. When you first saw Commander Areth's armor, how did you know you could fix it? Minho thought about the question. He remembered that first moment, looking at the quantum fractures in the void steel, seeing patterns where others saw only destruction. I didn't know I could fix it, he admitted. But I knew I had to try, because that's what engineers do. We look at broken things and see possibility. We look at impossible problems and ask what if. We refuse to accept that.